The NBA is 77 years old. It sounds old, but we have presidential candidates that outdate the association. Not good. Either way, in those 77 years, we've seen many greats come and go, and many eras come and go that have shaped the current era of basketball that we watch, debate, and love today. But as the game has evolved into what we see today, there are those that came from a prior time that's game was either way ahead of its time, or they just were on another level. So today, we're going to talk about 3 NBA past greats that will be just as important and just as talked about now as they were in their heyday. But first, if you enjoy NBA breakdowns and analysis, please subscribe to the channel. We are working for that 2,000 sub mark and can't do it without you guys. Also, check out the GOATcast podcast, streaming live every week with guests and some wild takes. Thank you, and now let's get into this. So with that said, let's take a look at number 3. Charles Barkley. I know, it's much more fun to see Barkley at the inside the NBA desk than it is terrorizing opposite teams on the court, but at one time, he was not only a menace on the boards and in the paint, but for other greats like Michael Jordan, Patrick Ewing, Magic Johnson, and others. For those people like me who grew up in the late 80s and 90s, you have no problem with this assessment. However, laying this claim to the younger gen might be a bit tough. While Barkley might not look the part from seeing him at the desk on TNT and how he looks slow and plodding, and if he attempts to race Kenny Smith to the board, do not let that fool you. The guy's old, and the wear and tear of the NBA has shown a little more on him than the other two since he's a little older. However, you can find footage of his game, and there's plenty out there. You will see how agile and formidable the former Auburn Tiger was. His game and size would almost be perfect for today's game, as he'd be strong enough to bully undersized bigs that will likely have to meet him as he's coming downhill, but also quick enough to punish the more plodding centers that will likely switch on to him. Barkley, with his size and skill set, was basically a precursor of what the current NBA has become, where any position can initiate the offense if necessary, and positionless basketball would not hinder his game at all, but probably maximize it, as he was a solid ball handler and had no problems finishing at the rim. For his height, at best being a 6'5" or 6'6" power forward that could play the 3, Barkley was an exceptional rebounder in an era where he was surrounded by skyscrapers on most teams, finishing his career averaging 11.7 boards per game and only averaging less than double-digit boards his rookie year. That 11.7 is more than Shaq's career average. His only drawback for this era would be his three-point shot, which he wasn't terrible at, but his career average is well below today's standard. However, he didn't take a lot of them, and despite his unfiltered, sometimes scatterbrained commentary off the court, Barkley had a fairly high basketball IQ and would likely adapt to the game of today. I could just imagine some heated wars between him and Draymond Green, as well as some wars with Giannis on any given night. Chuck's tough, unfiltered personality mixed into today's social media-driven league will probably make him as much of a star off the court as he could on. Somebody give us a time machine. Number 2, Dominique Wilkins. Much like Barkley, seemed to be ahead of his time. A crazy athletic forward who cooked in both the 80s and 90s, Neek seemed to be a step ahead of most of his competition and would be able to shine today as he did then. With an impressive dunk package, yeah, he should have beat Mike, but that's for another video, and a much faster free-flowing offense in today's game, Dominique would be heavily featured on any YouTube short, Facebook reel, Instagram story, Snapchat, wherever you find highlights. A 6'8" small forward that is sizable and athletic, akin in some ways to LeBron James and Jason Tatum, he wasn't quite the ball handler or playmaker, but was still able to play top-notch ISO and get out on the break if needed and finish strong at the rim. In today's NBA, with his size and ability to finish at the rim, he'd be a handful for most teams to try to defend, as he had a quick first step, but could also pull up at the mid-range and scorch a team that would play him too loose. One of the most underrated players of all time that seems to go overlooked due to playing at a time where Larry Bird and Magic Johnson had the spotlight, and then entering his prime when Jordan was taking over the NBA. His only real knock is that defensively, he wasn't great, not even sniffing an all-defensive team in his 15 seasons in the league. However, neither did the aforementioned Charles Barkley, and each with the rule changes from the 90s into now could probably adapt to switch everything mindset and be serviceable. His bread and butter was absolutely his ability to score. As mentioned, a high flyer who could get to the rim and ravage it while able to pull up and knock down mid-range jumpers at a high clip, and ability to shoot over his defenders. Even taking home a coveted scoring title during the days of early Mike, averaging 30.3. That tells you the scoring outbursts he could have, and while he spent the bulk of his career on an Atlanta Hawks team that surrounded him with okay talent, him with legit other all-stars and high-caliber players would be a beast to stop. Even though his shot was not the prettiest, like many during this time, he wasn't much of a three-point threat, but was not too shabby, averaging nearly 32% through his career. Either way, he'd be a staple in the All-Star game, and with the right team and combination of current stars, would likely bring home a ring or two. Lastly, number 1, the legend himself, Larry Legend. I've heard some crazy things from the current crop of NBA fans about the Hall of Famer. He's slow, unathletic, couldn't defend. Yet this guy is considered by most as the greatest player on the planet right now. Larry Bird is every bit of a pre-Nikola Jokic build, and while not as tall and big, was faster and a tad more potent from the three-point line. If your only memories of Bird is the early 90s, his back pretty much was shot. Maybe from helping Boston bring home all those chips in the 80s, but he was not quite the player we saw handling the Lakers and the Eastern Conference, but still managed to put up 19 and 20 points in his last 2 regular seasons. For all the disrespect the younger generation showed towards Bird, just based off looks, it'd be wise to check the stats and the talent he had, and how well that would translate to the current era of basketball. I mean, we see guys like Joe Ingles, Bojan Bogdanovic, and even Bogdan Bogdanovic cook teams and not have the typical NBA look, whatever that may mean. Bird would be no different, averaging throughout his career 24.3 points per game, 10 rebounds, and 6.3 assists on a 6'9" frame. Well, sounds pretty good. In a day and age where scoring is a little easier than it was a few decades ago, a guy that had the field goal percentage of 49.6, a three-point percentage of 37.6% would be an absolute star on the court. With the ability to also run the offense much like Jokic does, he fit right into the positionless play style that the 2010s and beyond ushered in. Call him slow, call him a plumber, call him whatever you want, but if Larry Bird were in the association today, you'd be calling him champ on probably quite a few occasions. So those are 3 past NBA players that would be megastars in today's game. Let me know in the comment section if you agree or disagree with these picks. This is a series that I will likely return to. Also, I'm putting together 3 players from the current era that will cook in the 80s and 90s, so be on the lookout for that. Also, if you want to ascend to GOAT status like number 23, please like and subscribe to the channel. Close in on 1K and can't do it without you guys. Hope you all enjoyed this content. I'll be back soon with more.